Thank you for joining us as we discuss the various components of self-determination through the transition process of Part 1. Part 1 will focus on what self-determination is, why is self-determination important, to include legal requirements, and NEISD transition services, what skills comprise self-determination, parent involvement, and resources to support self-determination. Part 2 is comprised of a face-to-face session that will focus on quality self-determination within the IEP to include instruction through meaningful self-determination assessments, developing self-determination goals and objectives, how to teach self-determination skills, and helpful information about choosing a self-determination curriculum. In addition, we will offer some examples in completing the student-led ARD process. The lesson objectives include that the learner will understand the basis of transition services and self-determination, understand the importance of the transition process beginning in the early years and continuing through adulthood, be able to connect the high school years to the early childhood years, and obtain information to provide to parents. Self-determination is a concept reflecting the belief that all individuals have the right to direct their own lives. Students who have self-determination skills have a stronger chance of being successful in making the transition to adulthood, including employment and independence. This definition can be applied to all students, not just a few. The Pacer Center further adds, the development of self-determination skills is a process that begins in childhood and continues throughout one's life. Self-determination is important for all people, but it is especially important and often more difficult to learn for young people with disabilities. Well-meaning individuals sometimes protect children with disabilities by making their decisions for them. Also, sometimes people assume that people with disabilities can't think for themselves. Self-determination is not a new concept. In 1952, the UN General Assembly, as cited in The Right of Peoples and Nations to Self-Determination, declared that self-determination as a human right, whereas the right of peoples and nations to self-determination is a prerequisite to the full enjoyment of all fundamental human rights. All people have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they must be free to pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. This means that self-determination empowers groups of people to take control of their own affairs and direct their own futures. Legal requirements. Do you consider self-determination for students a high priority in planning instruction? Do you include self-advocacy goals in students' education programs? What is the best practice in developing such goals and promoting self-determination in students? Over the past decade, special education has seen a major focus on promoting self-determination skills in students. Self-determination was written into law in the Public Housing Act of 1988 and quickly followed in other major pieces of legislation written for people with disabilities, including the Rehabilitation Act of 1992 and 1998 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990 and 1997. Federal law states, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of 2004, which is IDEA 2004, defines transition services as a coordinated set of activities for a student with a disability that is designed to be within a results-oriented process. IDEA 2004 requires that transition services and activities must be included in the development of the IEP, no later than the first IEP to be in effect when the student turns 16 or younger if determined appropriate by the IEP team. It must also include appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and, where appropriate, independent living skills. Furthermore, state law states that Texas requirements for transition services are aligned to the federal requirements included in IDEA 2004. However, state law and rules include additional requirements for the provision of transition services for students receiving special education services in Texas. State law requires that appropriate state transition planning must begin for a student no later than when the student reaches 14 years of age. Senate Bill 1788 on June 17, 2011, including consideration of the following 10 issues important to the development of the individual education program, the IEP, for students receiving special education services. Transition services in the law. Number 1, appropriate student involvement in the student's transition to life outside the public school system. Number 2, if the student is younger than 18 years of age, appropriate parental involvement in the student's transition by the student's parents and other persons invited to participate by the student's parents or the school district in which the student is enrolled. Number 3, if the student is at least 18 years of age, involvement in the student's transition and future by the student's parents or other persons, if the parent or the other person is A, invited to participate by the student or the school district in which the student is enrolled, or B, has the student's consent to participate pursuant to a supported decision-making agreement under Chapter 1357 Estates Code. Number 4, appropriate post-secondary education options, including preparation for post-secondary level coursework. Number 5, an appropriate functional vocational evaluation. Number 6, appropriate employment goals and objectives. Number 7, if the student is at least 18 years of age, the availability of age-appropriate instructional environments, including community settings or environments that prepare the student for post-secondary education or training, competitive integrated employment, or independent living in coordination with the student's transition goals and objectives. Number 8, appropriate independent living goals and objectives. Number 9, appropriate circumstances for facilitating a referral of a student or the student's parents to a governmental agency for services or public benefits, including a referral to a governmental agency to place the student on a waiting list for public benefits available to the student, such as a waiver program established under Section 1915C, Social Security Act, 42 U.S. Constitution, Section 1396 NC. Or number 10, the use and availability of appropriate A, supplementary aids, services, curricula, and other opportunities to assist the student in developing decision-making skills, and B, supports and services to foster the student's independence and self-determination, including supported decision-making agreement under Chapter 1357 Estates Code. Starting with the 1990 reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, transition services must be based on student needs and take into account student interests and preferences. Texas Education Code 29.011 and Texas Administrative Code 89.1055 emphasize beginning in the 2018-19 school year, not later than when the student reaches 14 years of age, the ARD Committee must consider and, if appropriate, address the following issues in the IEP. Appropriate student involvement in the student's transition to life outside the public school system, appropriate parent and supporter involvement in the transition planning process, the use and availability of appropriate supplementary aids and services, curricula, and opportunities to assist the student in developing decision-making skills, and supports and services to foster the student's independence and self-determination, including a supported decision-making agreement. In Texas, all legal rights transfer to the individual at age 18. Financial, medical, educational, and other decisions are up to the individual who has reached the age of majority. Schools can help prepare students for adulthood by providing instruction in self-determination skills and options for support to make legal decisions, such as supported decision-making agreement, power of attorney, and guardianship. Supported decision-making is a process of supporting and accommodating an adult with a disability to enable the adult to make life decisions, including decisions related to where the adult wants to live, the services, supports, and medical care the adult wants to receive, whom the adult wants to live with, and where the adult wants to work without impeding the self-determination of the adult. Texas States Code 1357.0023. NEISD Transition Services. Transition planning starts with the end in mind and begins as soon as a student becomes eligible for services. Educators are required to collaborate, coordinate, and communicate with students and families about their future based on students' interests, preferences, and strengths so that the connections can be made to agencies and other supports. NEISD promotes these efforts by ensuring student-focused planning activities, student developmental activities, and family and agency collaboration activities are provided. Transition services are addressed annually to ensure the student's program aligns with his or her post-secondary goals. Northeast ISD provides a comprehensive guide to completing the transition process in EastBed. In addition, the Student Transition Planning and Evidence folder, commonly known as the Yellow Folder, will assist the student's case manager in ensuring transition services are appropriately addressed. The purpose of special education, as defined by IDEA 2004, is to ensure that all students have available to them a free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designated to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. When students graduate from high school, they often face a future that has more questions than answers. For students with disabilities, the future can be even more uncertain. Transition planning helps students with disabilities and their families prepare for the transition to adult life after graduation from high school. Federal and state law requires school districts to include a discussion of transition services in the development of the student's individual education program at the annual ARD meeting to address these issues for students with disabilities, including transition assessments to identify student strengths, preferences, interests, and needs, post-secondary goals to describe what the student will be doing after high school, annual goals to support attainment of the skills needed to meet post-secondary education goals, a course of study outlining what classes the student will need in high school, a coordinated set of activities which is like a to-do list of actions needed to meet post-secondary goals to be completed by the student, family, school, or others, and agencies that can provide needed services in adulthood. The timeline for self-determination. The timeline for incorporating self-determination in the student's IEP begins as soon as the student becomes eligible for special education services. In early childhood, this includes opportunities for choice-making, self-regulation, and problem-solving during play and other activities. In elementary, this includes learning to identify strengths, struggles, and learning style, learning the purpose and contents of the IEP, and having the choice to attend ARD meetings. In middle school, this includes increased opportunities for independence, involvement in the ARD meetings, and self-awareness. In high school, this includes increased ownership of the IEP goals and the transition planning process, developing skills for requesting support and disability disclosure. In adulthood, this includes continuing learning and practicing skills for independence with supports as preferred. It's never too early to build a foundation for self-determination through systematic interventions for young students. The Early Childhood Foundations Model for Self-Determination is an inclusive model for children with disabilities, and it is a great resource that provides an instructional focus across the lifespan, which is critical for student success. Transition is helping students with disabilities and their families identify the student's strengths and areas of needed support and interests and preferences as they identify goals for their life after high school. This includes looking at the supports the student will need during and after completing school, for example, funding and other local agency support. In NEISD, this means starting the process as early as appropriate, having conversations with parents and students, completing interest inventories and surveys, creating post-secondary goals for life after high school, creating annual goals that will facilitate movement toward post-secondary goals, monitoring the IEP plan and goal progress, updating the transition plan as appropriate. Before age 14, beginning no later than 7th grade or 13 years old, whichever comes first, the ARD Committee considers transition and addresses each issue as appropriate. The student receives notice of ARD and participates in discussions about transition planning. By age 16, the IEP must include all required transition planning elements. For most students, all of the parental rights discussed in the procedural safeguards will transfer to the student at age 18. There must be documented evidence that the transfer of rights was discussed at the ARD where the student was 16 years of age. By age 17, the school provides the statement that the student has been informed of his or her rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, if any, that will transfer to him or her on the reaching of the age of majority. Student and family alternatives to guardianship, such as supported decision-making agreements and power of attorney, or guardianship as desired. On or before the student's 17th birthday, the NEISD must provide the parent and student written notice describing the transfer of parental rights and include information about guardianship and alternatives to guardianship, including the supported decision-making agreement and other supports and services that may enable the student to live independently. The transfer of rights form is signed at the ARD just prior to turning age 18. At age 18, legal rights transfer to the student. The role of parents in the student's education should never be dismissed. Along with a discussion of rights, you should include a discussion of the responsibilities that accompany those rights. For parents and students, schools should provide them with information about how to learn more about adult responsibilities, including information about alternatives to guardianship and supported decision-making. Transition in NEISD, steps to one's future. Self-determination needs to be seen as a developmental process from early childhood through adulthood that encompasses the following key factors in teaching self-determination skills. Self-determination skills need to be taught at the elementary as well as secondary grade levels. By working collaboratively, teachers can build sequentially on skills taught at previous grade levels, and self-determination skills can be infused throughout your existing daily curriculum. Furthermore, transition services in NEISD focuses on self-determination by empowering all students to be invited to their ARD meetings, have the opportunity to review key elements in their IEP, participate in transition assessments, receive a summary of performance during their final year of eligibility, have opportunities to practice using their SOP to share information about their strengths, interests, and needs, and receive direct instruction in self-determination skills. Transition services in NEISD focuses on self-determination by empowering most students to prepare for the ARD meeting by discussing the agenda with the case manager, participating in the ARD meeting, practicing to disclose information about the disability and needed supports, develop a resume as part of a career preparation, work-based learning, and developing the summary of performance in collaboration with the school team or ARD committee members. Transition services in NEISD focuses on self-determination by empowering some students to lead the entire ARD meeting, mentor other students in gaining or practicing self-determination skills, participate in the development of a visual resume or personal profile to help communicate strengths, interests, and needs. Transition in elementary school may begin as early as 3 years old. Preschool programs for children with disabilities, PPCD, comprise a continuum of special education services for eligible students with disabilities between the ages of 3 to 5. PPCD refers to the services provided by the school district, not the place where they are provided. Eligible children may receive PPCD services in a variety of settings, such as speech-language therapy, pre-kindergarten, resource, and self-contained classrooms. Services are typically provided to a student via either walk-in speech-language therapy or classroom instruction. For students in grades kinder through 2nd grade, they can be involved in completing age-appropriate transition surveys to present information about themselves at the student-led conferences. This will be discussed more in depth during the face-to-face session. For students in grades 3 through 5, they can be involved in completing age-appropriate transition surveys to present information about themselves at student-led conferences and within the PLAF, or present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, to begin attaining their goals. Beginning at the 5th grade, the student will attend and lead a portion of his or her IEP meeting. This will be discussed more in depth during the face-to-face session. At the secondary level, students in grades 6 through 8 continue to attend and lead a portion of their IEP meeting to include presenting their present levels of performance, discussing their goals and accommodations, working to attain their goals, and to include a reflection of their progress. Students at this level should be able to make choices and set goals based upon an understanding of their skills, interests, and limits. They should be able to express their goals, to help build the support needed, establish a plan to attain their goals, evaluate their plan, and adjust their goal or plan. At the secondary level, students in grades 9 through 12 continue to attend and lead a portion of their IEP meeting to include presenting their present levels of performance, discussing their goals and accommodations, and working on attaining annual IEP and post-secondary goals, which should also include a reflection of their progress. High school students should know, what are my goals for after high school? Where do I want to work? What type of education do I plan to pursue beyond high school? Where do I want to live? Will I need support? What will I do for fun? Who will my friends be when I'm no longer in school? How will I get around? Will I drive, take a bus, carpool? What is my graduation plan? What classes will I take during high school to help me meet my goals? What supports help me to be successful in my classes? Did I need accommodations or modifications? What agencies will help me after I graduate from high school? What assistive technology will I need after I graduate? What is the plan to increase independence as I get closer to graduation? Transition to life after high school. The goal of special education is to prepare all students for life after high school. Options after high school completion may include education training. This involves a specific vocational or career field, apprenticeship, on-the-job training, 2 to 4 year college or university, and/or vocational tech programs. Employment. This can be paid, competitive, supported, or sheltered, unpaid, which may be in an internship, and/or the military. Independent living skills, if applicable. This involves adult living, daily living, financial, transportation, hygiene, and personal care, to name a few. Self-determination skills can impact the following by increasing student involvement in IEP meetings, improving academic success in high school, having higher rates of enrollment in and completion of post-secondary educational experiences, expanding options for post-school employment. Furthermore, self-determination skills facilitate attainment of almost any post-secondary transition goal. For students who require additional instruction in attaining their IEP goals, 18+ programming is designed to address additional instructional needs as determined through the ARD process in order to support transition to post-secondary education age-appropriate environments. Students who will graduate by IEP with modified curriculum may require continuing transition instruction and support despite having earned the required coursework for graduation and having met participation requirements for EOC exams. All 18+ instruction is based upon the student's PLAF, transition goals, and instructional needs. This setting for this instruction may be the campus, community, or a combination of both. The length of enrollment in 18-plus programs is based upon individual student needs and their acquisition of the targeted skills. Students receiving 18-plus program services have already met credits for graduation. Local courses have been developed that meet Office of Civil Rights course naming to include adaptive skills, domestics, community, college prep. This course is only offered in the 18-plus community-based program. Community-based vocational instruction, vocational adjustment class, and work-based learning. The purpose of the 18-plus program is to ensure students receive instruction designed to improve post-school results, ensure students receive direct instruction in the community, classroom, or a combination in order to develop social, behavioral, and/or vocational skills that will prepare them for quality of life post-high school, ensure students receive specially designed instruction to support transition, instruction, skill practice, and progress monitoring in an age-appropriate environment, and to facilitate the learning and use of self-determination skills. Now we are going to focus on the essential components of self-determination. This focuses on what is self-determination? Why is self-determination important to include legal requirements and NEISD transition services? What skills comprise self-determination, parent involvement, and resources to support self-determination? Self-determination skills. To prepare students for success in high school and beyond, we must teach generalizable behaviors to enhance any post-secondary goal. The development of self-determination is a lifelong process and is a means to obtaining an improved quality of life. The self-determination skills presented herein emphasize concepts that are crucial to one's personal development and overall well-being. For students with IEPs, it is imperative that we know what skills comprise self-determination, how to teach skills related to self-determination, and provide sufficient opportunities for utilization of these skills. Skill acquisition is a product of opportunity to learn and practice. The skills that are taught through self-determination include choice-making, which involves the indication of a preference from a group of 2 or more options, decision-making, selecting which of a set of potential solutions is best, problem-solving, identifying and defining a problem, then generating potential solutions to the problem, goal setting, identifying a goal, developing an action plan, and evaluating one's progress toward achieving the goal, self-regulation, examining one's possible responses to a situation and revising one's response as necessary, self-advocacy, having the knowledge and skills to speak on one's own behalf, self-awareness, knowing one's strengths and limitations, and self-efficacy, believing in one's ability to engage in specific behavior or task. In developing self-determination goals and objectives, you need to know what skills comprise self-determination, decide what skills to teach to individual students, and know where to find instructional materials to provide instruction. This chart presents selected developmental milestones in knowledge and skills that focus on self-determination from birth to adulthood. These skills may also be addressed in the IEP. Part 2 of this session will provide helpful information about choosing a self-determination curriculum. Take some time to review the self-determination skills chart to assist in developing IEP goals and objectives targeting self-determination as applicable. Please note this chart is not exhaustive. The chart is available on the Transition Services Google site available on the NEISD Launchpad. decision-making, problem solving, goal setting and attainment, self-regulation, self-advocacy, self-awareness, self-efficacy, This chart presents choice making. Decision making. Problem solving. Goal setting and attainment. Self-regulation. Self-advocacy. Self-awareness. Self-efficacy. Parent involvement begins by providing parents with the knowledge and resources needed to promote self-determination skills within their child. Parent education is a process that involves having an open discussion with the school about their child's goals for the future, sharing appropriate information about the child's disability with parents to build an understanding of the disability, researching the child's needs and accommodations that work best for the student, becoming familiar with campus, community, and online resources. By preparing others in addition to the student, you can ensure that a student's emerging self-determination skills will have a receptive audience. The parent-student role in learning self-determination skills remains a critical factor in how well a student achieves self-determination. Therefore, parents can support teaching self-determination by encouraging generalization of self-determination and behavioral skills, honoring the choices and decisions the student makes, and supporting the goals that the student sets. Additionally, by creating, organizing, and maintaining this child's IEP binder, parents may begin to develop a sense of increasing involvement in the IEP and transition planning processes. It cannot be emphasized enough that transition planning starts early. Schools should have processes in place to share information about adult supports as soon as the student becomes eligible for services, and educators should not wait to ask students and families their future plans so that the connections can be made to agencies and other supports. Several resources are available to assist families with the transition process, which can be located on the NEISD Transition Google site. Texas Parent to Parent offers a transition timeline to help families get ready for transition starting at age 6. They also offer a transition inventory, which is a tool for parents to assess what they are planning for their youth's childhood. It provides transition steps with websites and phone numbers to get started. The Arc of San Antonio works with families to provide access to community-based services. Understood.org provides resources to families that will empower them to understand their children's needs. The IEP Binder Checklist allows parents to make effective choices that propel their child from simply coping to truly thriving as they become involved in the IEP and transition planning process. The Texas Transition and Employment Guide, updated in July 2018, which is available in both English and Spanish, provides an overview of IDEA provisions related to the inclusion of interagency responsibilities or linkages in the IEP. The purpose of the electronic Texas Transition and Employment Guide is to provide students receiving special education services and their parents information on statewide services and programs that assist in the transition to life outside of the public school system. The Texas Transition and Employment Guide must be provided by either hard copy or internet link at every annual ARD where transition is discussed or when the guide has been updated. Since it is a new guide, be sure your families are receiving the most updated version. Don't begin to plan for after age 22 at 21 and a half. One of the most important things parents can do is teach their children how to help themselves. To do this, children must learn what works for them, what does not work for them, and how to get help or help themselves. Children best learn self-determination skills when they are taught and practiced both at home and school. To make this process a team effort, a 4-part parent education series will be shared with parents to include information or ideas of activities that can be done at home. The following is a list of some of the self-determination home lesson ideas parents will receive as part of the 4-part parent education series. Part 1, what is self-determination? Part 2, what can parents do at home? Part 3, speaking for my child at the ARD? And Part 4, self-determination ideas for parents. Remember, our goal in teaching self-determination skills is to help all students with an IEP know themselves, their goals, and providing the supports they need to reach their goals. Every student with an IEP has the ability to learn and benefit from making his or her own choices. NEISD offers several resources in support of self-determination for educators, families, and students. The resources shared in this presentation can be accessed on the NEISD Transition Google site via the NEISD Launchpad. Visit our websites to learn more. In closing, the most powerful of all meetings is when the student's voice is heard and when the team uses transition planning as the compass. The courage that it takes to plan forward will be much easier when the focus is on the child. Supporting self-advocacy skills and self-determination skills within the ARD process from the time the child is 3 years old will propel the child forward to achieve possibilities that will allow them to soar and achieve lives with meaning upon exiting the public school system. We thank you for your time and hope you will continue to empower, educate, and grow as leaders.